Alright, for today I will be servicing the lower unit on this 1979 85 horsepower Evinrude outboard. I don't know if it needs to be rebuilt or resealed or a new water pump, so we're going to figure that out first, and if it does, go ahead and reseal it. First step is to drain the fluid out of here, see what we're working with. I see some broken water intake screen. Not necessarily a big deal, but kind of notable. I already broke the screws loose using a flathead on a screwdriver for ratchet. So with those loose, and then use a screwdriver to get them out the rest of the way. Not bad at all, really. I don't feel any metal shavings or anything in the oil yet, so that's a good sign. So I'm going to call it the oil old and dirty, but it's no metal shavings, and I don't see any evidence water ever got in there. So I'm not going to spend the money, time, and effort to reseal the lower unit. I'll use the engine for a little while. Well, let the customer use the engine for a little while, and then have them bring it back to me, and then we'll see if it's got any issues, and then I'll reseal it. But for the most part, I'm going to call this lower unit okay. We're still going to take it off. We're going to take a look at the water pump, see how that looks. Probably just replace it anyway, so no really reason to look at it, but we'll do that now. So this won't fit on my lower unit holding fixture with the propeller on. It will, just not very well. So I'm going to take the propeller off, which you should do anyway to make sure there's no fishing line inside of there. This seems pretty stuck in place. So we'll get some PB Blaster, set it in there, let it soak in for a little bit. Now while that's soaking away, to lower off, we got to pull off these whale tail trim tab things, so I'll do that now. Alright, now it's time to pull the pivot pin out. So to do that, we need to get down under inside of here. You can't see it. I made a previous video with something similar to one of these, showing you a little more detailed how to do it. But basically what I'm using is a locking type little extension with my 3/8 socket, which I think is the right size, and a longer one. And that should allow me to get in there and get that pin out. A little hard to get it on. As you can tell, that thing was pretty tight. And there's our pin. I'll tilt the motor back up and pull the lower off. So, I'll revisit the prop hardware now, finish getting this off. For that I'll use my tire spoon. I'm just going to put pressure on it as I spin the prop around, which we're in gear now, so it makes it a little trickier. Before I put this back on, we're going to need to wire wheel this whole propeller shaft and grease it all up so this doesn't happen again. Need to pull that out first to get to the bolt underneath. And you can kind of feel the bolt down inside of there. I got a short little extension on here, but a deep socket probably work fine too. For these, I'm going to break them loose and then switch over to the speed ratchet. So, if you notice that I did there, I backed this one out a little bit, about halfway, took the rest out, so the entire lower unit's now being held in by this one last screw, and I kind of broke it loose already. It looks like it's going to stay put. So as I get this off, it's going to go straight over to the holding fixture, where I'll tighten it down. Looks like we got some buildup of whatever this stuff is. Looks like, I don't know, clay sand, I guess. I have no idea. I'm going to tilt this thing backwards, or forward rather, get in there with a screwdriver, chip it all out, and get the shop vac and try to get the top cleaned up. Alright, the top cleaned up, we're going to pull the water pump off, 4 bolts, screws, whatever, they hold it on, strip those off. So, you could ask yourself, well, the impeller looks okay, did it need a water pump? Yeah, kinda, these aren't that springy. Could you have hooked it up and would it have pumped water? Probably, but how long until one of these vanes break off and then clog your whole motor? And also, we already have some rubber particles stuck inside of our impeller housing. So, I don't know, it's worth the money to just buy a water pump if you're bringing one of these old things back to life. So just my thoughts anyway. The drive shaft is pretty dry and starting to show a little bit of signs of rust, so we'll clean that up a little bit. That bottom doesn't look too bad. I'll wire wheel up the top a little bit here. That way our new water pump makes a nice good seal. And also here's some more rubber parts. I doubt they're from the water pump, but you never know. They could have been at one point in time. So as always, I will be running a tap down each hole. Every screw I remove, I always do this. Every bolt will get anti-seize. Make sure we don't have any problems in the future if we ever need to remove it. I'll be using my tap socket on a 1/4" ratchet for these ones, and as well as the size socket for it. Excuse me, tap. I have some acetone on a paper towel. I'll use that to clean up all gasket surfaces, or at least what's going to be a gasket surface. Alright, here is the components of our water pump repair kit. So the first thing we need to do, see these 4 little tabs coming up? An O-ring goes right there. So what the OMC recommends to do is get some gasket and sealant type M and put it here, 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 and here, and making sure that you get none inside this little channel right here. I don't have any M, so I'm going to be using some Permatex number 2. Haven't had any problems doing this in the past. Everybody in the internet forums recommends it too, so I'm going to roll with it. So they say a drop. I don't quite know what a drop means to them versus me, but I'll put a little in there. I got some excess in there, so I'll clean that out a bit. Now we need to put the O-ring inside our little grooves here, like so. Now we need to coat the outside of the bearing cup with some gasket sealing compound, being careful not to get it anywhere near the bleed hole. I'd say that's slightly coated now. So now we install her, and like so. Now we have this piece. Has a little taper to it. It'll help guide in the water tube. Now I'm going to put a hair of grease in there just to make sure everything's going to install smoothly and come back out when the time comes. Should do it. Now this guy gets installed like so. Now we can bolt this back down. So we need to use gasket sealing compound on the screws. This will prevent it from rusting or seizing in there. But chances are, if it does, you're going to be replacing this water pump anyway, so it's not the big deal, but it's recommended, so we're doing it. Alright, and that is almost the end of our water pump. We have this special shaped ring seal for it. Need to figure out the best way to install that. Looks like that should do it. Yep, alright, like so. Now I'll use some Permatex too. I'll put it inside that casing and then put that back on. It's probably going to fall off a few times, but hopefully the Permatex will hold it in place. Now you don't want to get any on the inside of the housing. And that should do it. And that's ready to install. Before we slide the impeller down, we need to finish up the bottom piece here. For that, we need our gasket first. Try to figure out the best way to align it. Looks like that will do perfectly. So you have an option to coat this side in the gasket sealing compound or the gasket itself. I'm going to go with the gasket itself. And that should do it. Now we slide our bearing plate back down, or impeller plate, whatever you want to call it. Installs like so. Now rotate the shift rod, or the drive shaft a little bit, so you don't have the notch facing downward. And you install the little key. Now you don't want the notch above this, because should this key fall in, then you're fishing it out of there. But somehow this key goes in here. Alright, I got the impeller key installed. It has a little indent on it to really hold it in there, so that's kind of going to be handy, but kind of surprised me when I put it in. So I'm going to ease my installation by using my drive shaft socket that goes on the top and allow me to rotate the drive shaft with a socket, or a ratchet rather. So just so you know what I'm doing up top, here's our new impeller housing. The inside is plastic now, the old one was brass, so you don't need to worry about coating this with anything, because in theory it'll just slide down. I suppose if you wanted to, you could dab some oil inside of there, just to make install easy, which I just decided I'm going to be doing. Alright, so we slide it over our water, drive shaft, whatever, down. Apparently it's still pretty stuck. My wire wheel didn't do that good of a job, I guess. But there we are, nice and installed. I'm going to put a little bit of gear oil in my little cup. In case you were wondering when I oiled the impeller housing there, I had this sitting on my bench from a previous video / project, and it was still there. Just wanted to put some new in there. What you're doing here is greasing the inside of the impeller housing. Or not greasing, but oiling. This will make the installation of the impeller a little easier. I've used grease here in the past, the triple guard grease. It's done fine, giving me no issues. But if you think about it, if you get any sand or anything in there, that grease is just going to kind of hold it. I figure with the oil, it'll dissipate after a few uses. Alright, that's nice and oiled up. So now we need to slide our impeller housing down and over the drive shaft, just like so. The water pickup tube is behind the drive shaft here, so right there is where it needs to be. So in theory what you do here is you've put some downforce here while rotating the drive shaft. So it's going to get a little tight. My younger years, I just forced it on there and went about my merry way. As I get older, I guess I'm getting weaker, and now I'm going to use the socket on top of the drive shaft. So see what I did there? The problem we have now, which is very common, is the O-ring came off. Sometimes you'll get lucky and it won't. Sometimes, rarely probably. Now it's not an O-ring, I know, but a special shape seal. But luckily, we just put it right back on. The Permatex is going to hold that inner O-ring okay. So now we give it a try again. Hopefully this time it stays put. And it looks like my gasket and bearing plate are decently aligned as well. So the screws have what looks like Loctite on there, but the manual also recommends putting some gasket sealing compound on the screws. So that's what I'll be doing here. Now we need to tighten the 4. I recommend 60 to 80 inch-pounds. So I'll be doing that. Our kit came with a new shift rod rubber piece, so we'll be sliding the old one off and putting the new one on. So the top of our drive shaft, we have a little indent there. I didn't see no ring come out of there. Usually they have one, so I'll install that back there. The kit came with some moly lube, so we'll be applying that to the drive shaft splines. You don't want any of the top of the drive shaft because then it may not go in all the way, and if it does you might wind up crushing something, so something to keep in mind. Well, that's it for the water pump. Now we just got a couple other final finishing touches to do. We still have some crud on the inside here of our exhaust housing, so I'm going to scrape all that out. Alright, as you know, I don't like fighting with hardware, so I always tap every screw I take out and install, and then I wire wheel each screw. So I'll be doing that as well. Using the tap sockets for this. Now between each one, I'll be washing it with the toothbrush and dipping it in some oil. So that's what I'll be doing. Alright, hardware threads are cleaned up. I cleaned up the heads of the bolts too, just because I didn't do as good of a job as I usually do. I got lazy. So I'm going to apply some to these bolts right now. That way I'm not trying to hold and fight it while these things are not dipped. These are ready to go. I'll get the lower unit and I'll slap it into the engine. Alright, with the lower unit right about there, I'll slide in our little exhaust foot here, if you want to call it that. Do you see how I finger tighten that all the way down? That's the beauty of cleaning the hardware, both the threads inside of the thing and the screws itself. When I showed you the picture earlier of all the hardware, I kind of forgot the smaller one. Now I'll tap the trim tab screw. Now I'll install the trim tab. This was, I think anyway, right at 2 degrees when I took it off. I need to wire wheel this prop shaft down. Gonna make sure I do that. That way you won't have any problems taking it off later. Now I can't clean one side and not the other, so I'm going to sandpaper inside of here. And we'll see if it fits. That's better. Alright, we're going to apply some grease to the propeller shaft. This is the triple guard grease. Should do it. Install that guy. Propeller. Propeller adapter nut thingy. Spacer probably. And the propeller nut. So in case you're wondering, propeller nut is a 1 1/8 size. So our hole is right here. You don't need to go very tight on these things. I'm just going to go to the next notch. Honestly, that might even be too tight. Nah, it's okay. Cotter pin is a little too long. Doesn't really want to install in there. I'm going to take it to the grinder, trim it down a little bit. Alright, I got my new smaller diameter trim down cotter pin ready. Alright, that should do it. Let's go ahead and lower the engine back down and get the shift pin back in. I also forgot to mention that I did tighten these down. Just didn't get it on camera. Alright. Apparently taking the phone off the stand and just putting it in here allows you to see what I'm doing. So this rod right there, wiggling right there, that is our shift rod. So what we need to do here is align the rod wherever it went to, right there, in with the hole the tilt pin goes through, which you can't see because the angle you're on, but trust me, it's there. So there you can kind of see what the problem is. You're going to have to get something in there to force that rod back a little bit so the inside hole of your pin in that rod line up. So as you can see, I've got a screwdriver wedged in there. That should kind of do it. Now some advice, clean up the tilt pin before you try to put it in. It'll go a lot smoother. So what I'm going to do is put some, probably some gasket sealing compound on the threads here, and I'm going to try putting a magnet on my extension, but I don't know if it'll go in. If it doesn't, I'll put some grease on the head. That way it'll hold the screw when I go to put it in. Alright, add some grease, which, as you just saw, ain't going to help much. Let's try something else. Alright, masking tape should do her. In theory, put it in, pull it out. Hopefully masking tape comes with. Probably won't. Probably have to fish that out next, but whatever. So, we can use the shifter to tilt the other end to where it needs to be. Let me get a bigger screwdriver in there. Alright, I've got a huge flathead wedged in there now. So in theory, I can push on the rod while pushing my pin in, and if everything lines up correctly, the rod should find its way right in there. Kind of looks like I'm there. So that kind of gives you a view of how I did that. And you can see our masking tape and our pin coming out on the other side. So now we'll pull this off. Masking tape came with it, so we're looking pretty good so far. All right, with the pin in, no tape, screwdriver out. It's all kind of holding itself up now. Now I can get a ratchet onto my extension, tighten down the rest of the way. All right, perfect. So you can check now to make sure it's shifting in and out of gear okay. That can be a little tricky. You need to spin the flywheel while doing that. Neutral right there. And forward. And reverse. So, job well done on that one. One more thing to do now. So now we need to refill the gear case. I've already pulled out the top screw here. But whenever you pull these out, you also need to replace these little seals. You get the bottom screw out. Apparently more oil. Alright, to fill the lower unit, we're going to need one of these little bottles of gear oil and one of these little pump adapters. This is the Evinrude type, so it has the Evinrude little screw fitting on it. We're going to screw that to the hole of the bottom of our gear case. Let me pan over. It's still dribbling out a little, I know, but... Alright, so that's in there. Open up our bottle. Put this on. And we pump away. Now, how do you know when you're done? It'll come out the top. Probably getting close here, so you want to have your screw ready. You want to make sure that you put this in before you remove your little pump. Last thing you want is that to be out, because when it is, that'll come out a lot faster. Now you got to be quick here. Vent, not so much. Bottom, yeah, probably don't want to be lollygagging around or dropping screws like I did. Now, you want to drain all the fluid out that you can out of your pump. You won't get it all out, but you get a lot of it. In case you're wondering, I use an entire bottle, and the pump tube doesn't quite go to the bottom, so I had to rotate it, unscrew it, and kind of put it in like so, and pump it the rest of the way. That's nothing unusual. If you were going to be doing this, probably just a lot of this anyway, you could probably get a longer tube. I've had this thing for years and I still haven't gotten a longer tube, so not a big deal, but something notable. Before I go, there is one thing that I forgot to mention. When we were cleaning the mud and gunk or whatever that stuff was that was in the lower unit here, what that did was allow access to this hole. So when you take this thing in and out of the water, you're going to have puddles of water right here, and they're going to drain out of these little holes. If they were clogged and water not able to drain, you could store water, freezes over the winter, and then you had all kinds of problems, as you know, could crack or break something. So you want to make sure those are clean. Well, that does it for this video. Hope you found it helpful, entertaining, and educational. If you got any questions, I'm here to help. Comment, make sure you subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video. Perhaps I'll be cleaning out the carburetors. That's what's soaking in these 2 drums right now. So, have a good one.